Like gone are the days of there's an exact formula of when you're going to find the best cash deal on a flight. Airlines are a business and they're a pretty smart business. And so this idea of if you look on the fourth Tuesday of the month, you're going to find the best of the best cash deal. It's not quite as simple as that anymore. It's not as straightforward as this very formulaic process. There can be a lot of searching involved. You're also not going to find a ton of last minute cash deals, which is in contrast to points, which I'm sure we'll talk about shortly as well. Last minute cash deals are generally, there's always an exception on when we're talking about travel deals, but generally on the more expensive side than planning a little further in advance.
Hey there, points people. You just heard a clip from Megan from the Daily Drop. Daily Drop is a newsletter first company that makes travel education simple. And Megan is Daily Drop's community manager. She didn't own a passport until she was 23 years old, but the first international trip truly had her hooked. In this episode, expect to hear about how strategies for finding cash flight deals is different versus finding points flight deals. We'll talk about which one tends to have better deals these days. We'll go through a demo of Daily Drop Pro and so much more. And if you are in the market for a new card to earn points so you can travel like Megan, check out geobreezetravel.com/cards. And if you're not sure what card is right for you, I offer free credit card consultations at geobreezetravel.com/consultations. We'll send you personalized recommendations based on your particular travel goals, budget, and lifestyle. And now, on with the show. Hey, Megan. Welcome to the GeoBreeze Travel Podcast.
Hello. So excited to be here and share some travel deal brilliance with your audience.
I'm so excited to have you here and to talk about how people can find great flight deals and travel deals when they're looking with points versus when they are looking for cash deals. Because I feel like people oftentimes try to take strategy from one of those camps and then apply it to the other, and they get frustrated of why they can't find any good flight deals. Before we get into all of that, tell us a little bit about you and how did you get into the world of points and miles?
Yeah, so I actually had never left the country all the way up until I was 23 years old. I didn't even have a passport. And the idea of travel was like a dream. I would kind of like scroll on Pinterest boards and be like, oh, it would be so cool to go to these places. But it never really felt like it was going to happen for me. And I went on my first international trip, just a very cliche trip to Mexico. And I fell in love with it. I was like, I've got to keep making this happen, whatever it takes. And so I kind of started learning everything I could about budget travel, finding travel deals. And I accidentally stumbled into the miles and points world from there. I signed up for Chase Sapphire Preferred Card. I had no idea if it was a good card or like what that even meant for the world of miles and points. But then I booked my first trip with points, and kind of the rest was history from there. I met some awesome travelers in a lounge and they taught me what they knew. And I think learning with other people is kind of the best way to learn everything there is about travel deals.
And so now you've kind of made a full-time job out of this. You work for the Daily Drop. How did you get connected with that team and kind of turn this love for travel into a career?
Yeah, so they were looking for a community manager, and it kind of brought all my loves together. Like I just said, I think learning about miles and points, learning about travel deals is one of the best ways to learn everything. And so when it was community management, which is what my background is in, and travel deals, I was like, oh my gosh, this is a dream come true. It's like all of my loves coming together. And I was super excited to work with the entire Daily Drop team. We're actually creator founded by Kara and Nate. I don't if listeners have ever heard of them. They're a massive travel YouTube channel. So I was really thrilled to work with them as well. And yeah, that's how I got here.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about how people can find better flight deals. Let's start with talking about cash deals, because that's where most people start whenever they're like, okay, what's a really good flight deal? Most people are thinking, I want to get X $100 off of a flight. How do people find those good deals?
I love that we're starting here too, because I always say like miles and points are great, but cash deals are always going to rock. And we have to think about both of those in our travel budget. So let's see. A couple of things come to mind when it comes to cash deals. First of all, like gone are the days of there's an exact formula of when you're going to find the best cash deal on a flight. Airlines are a business and they're a pretty smart business. And so this idea of if you look on the fourth Tuesday of the month, you're going to find the best of the best cash deal. It's not quite as simple as that anymore. It's not as straightforward as this very formulaic process. There can be a lot of searching involved. You're also not going to find a ton of last minute cash deals, which is in contrast to points, which I'm sure we'll talk about shortly as well. Last minute cash deals are generally, there's always an exception on the when we're talking about travel deals, but generally on the more expensive side than planning a little further in advance. And I think the third thing that comes to mind, and we can kind of break down, like double tap on any of these that you want to, but the third thing that comes to mind is usually when we're looking at cash deals, we're finding better deals on round trip itineraries versus points deals. We're finding better deals on one way. So those are kind of the three things that come to mind for me.
Yeah, that is a great starting place. How do people logistically search for these?
Mhm.
Are people just always finding these on Google Flights, or are there other types of tools that you like to use or other specific airline websites that are best for finding flight deals?
Yeah, I've always been a huge Google Flights fan. That's kind of always where I've done my research. It's always where I've found deals when I'm looking for a very specific route. Now, there's definitely incredibly supportive tools. I obviously love Daily Drop Pro, which we can talk about a little bit. And there's kind of use cases for it. And I think there's use cases for different types of travel tools depending on how you travel and what your travel circumstances are. So, with something like Google Flights, if you have a very specific route and very specific date window, you can set things like price alerts on those routes. Now, if you're kind of I want to travel everywhere, like everywhere is on my list kind of person, and maybe have a little more flexibility with your dates, then comes in the question of, okay, well, how many flight alerts are you actually setting up? Which is where something like Daily Drop Pro comes into play because it checks through all of the airlines, all of the dates without you having to set hundreds of thousands of different alerts. I think Google Flights is also great because they have their search anywhere feature. So if you're like, I have an open window and I can just search my home airport to literally type in the word anywhere and just see what's the cheapest. I think that's another great use case for Google Flights. So to me, it all comes down to how are you traveling? And then how much time do you have to put into the research of it all? Because finding a travel deal, cash or points, it can take some time running through the search. I think that surprises some people. A lot of people ask me, what's the best way to find the cash deal or the points deal? And the truth is it's going to take research at the end of the day. And so there are tools like Daily Drop Pro that are going to help you kind of cut down the time on it all as well.
Yeah, so lots of great different techniques for finding cash deals, whether it's with Google Flights or different airline websites as well. Some of
Yeah.
them are a little bit easier than others to work with as far as finding a great calendar if you are flexible with when you want to fly. What would you say are some of those airlines where it's easier to find deals on their website with cash deals versus like you're clicking day by day and that
Mm-hmm.
airline's can be a bit of a pain?
Yeah, that's such an interesting question. It's honestly, it's rare that I go direct to the airline for cash deals. If I am, I'm usually looking on my EasyJet, Ryanair flights. Once I've used points to get over to Europe, EasyJet, Ryanair are kind of like my favorite go-tos. And so I'm like looking on their website to find great deals. That's how I found my infamous $13 flight for a $13 waffle in Belgium. They had a great calendar view that I could use, and I found a nice Ryanair deal for $13, which is just wild. So I like to use it for kind of those budget airlines, easy hop around kind of trips.
Wait, so was this a special promotion? Was this a mistake there where Ryanair was selling $13 flights? Where was the waffle involved? Tell us more about this.
It was not necessarily like a very special promotion, but I know that Ryanair is known for just like dropping their prices dramatically to like 13 to $26. So it wasn't like it incredibly special promotion that they were running. It's something that those kind of Europe budget airlines do that are kind of unheard of in the US. I feel like domestic US flights, we would never find a deal like that. The waffle was involved because I wanted a waffle in Belgium. And I just think it's hilarious that I spent just about the same amount on the flight as I did on the waffle.
What was the route that you flew in order to get this waffle in Belgium?
It was Edinburgh to Brussels.
How is the Ryanair experience? I know some people are like, oh, I don't know if I want to do Ryanair or EasyJet, or on the Asian side, like AirAsia or Huawei or any of those low-cost carriers. I have flown Hong Kong Airlines, and the legroom is smaller than what you get with Spirit here in the US. Which budget carriers would you say, like, oh, if you see a good deal, you should go ahead and book it because it's an okay airline, versus ones where you're like, just avoid at all costs. Like, I'm not going to accept $13 to pay this, to fly this.
I love that question because I'm fairly anti-budget airline because I'm kind of at the stage where I prefer the comfort on flights like you're talking about. I don't like to be incredibly cramped with zero leg room. So I'm pretty picky about it, especially US domestic flights. My favorite budget airline US is Allegiant. In Europe, though, you can get almost anywhere in like less than 3 hours. And so to me, if I'm going on an hour flight, which I think off the top of my head, the Edinburgh to Brussels was maybe an hour, hour and a half flight, that's going to be worth $13 for me. I can put up with an hour of being cramped. I'd say my favorite Europe budget carrier is definitely EasyJet. I find them to be just a smidge better than Ryanair. But do know what you're getting into when you're purchasing a ticket with a budget airline like that. You're going to pay for any extras you have. So for that trip that I took, I only had a personal item, a very small backpack. And so I wasn't paying for any of those extras. You're going to pay for seat selection. You're going to pay for anything extra that you add on. So I think it's important to know what you're getting into when you book those budget airlines as well.
Yeah, that's very important. If you're the kind of person who you're trekking through Europe, you have 3 big suitcases, and you have a family of 6, they need to sit together, it might just cost the same to do a full service airline like British Airways or Air France or something like that.
Yeah, it's so important to look at that. I was just trip planning last night and I found an EasyJet flight from, where was I going? Isle of Man to London during a very busy season because there's this very particular race that happens on Isle of Man. And the flight ticket was okay, but they were upcharging luggage. Just carry-on luggage was 55 pounds per person. So you really have to look at it because they'll change. I think they change some of that seasonally and things like that as well.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so when finding cash deals, think about what kind of airline you're getting into with these budget airlines. You can use Google Flights for all sorts of different fun tips and tricks. We have entire podcast episodes about that as well. Let's transition a little bit and talk about points deals. Obviously, we have many, many episodes and tutorials about how to find deals with points, but what would you say are some of the main differences where if you come from more of a background of finding great cash fares, you mentioned round trip on cash versus one way on points. What are some of the other big differences of how what works here doesn't necessarily work there?
Yeah. So I think one of the key pieces that is the foundation to all of this, and I think where people kind of get a little tripped up, is that points flights are not priced according to their cash price. So a lot of people who are beginners to miles and points will kind of start their point search on something like Google Flights, but that Google Flight search, maybe that's good for you to find the route or something like that, but it's really going to have nothing to do with what you're finding as far as points deals, because airlines price their cash flights differently than their points flights, right? So I think that's kind of the foundational piece that everyone needs to know going into this and starting to learn how to do smart research with points deals. So yeah, you mentioned for points deals, generally we're finding those better deals on one-way tickets. That doesn't mean that you are now stuck in that destination forever, but it actually gives you a lot of flexibility on how you can use your points there and how you can use your points back. Also, points deals allow you to, I'm sure you've talked about this so many times on the podcast, but they do open up that world of luxury premium experiences because of what I was talking about in the beginning, where they're not priced according to their cash price. And then you get access to various sweet spot as well. And I think what I was mentioning earlier with the cash flights is a lot of times you're going to find saver space open last minute as well. So there's a bit of a flexibility aspect or element that kind of comes into finding your points deals. So those are the key differences and some starting points on finding the best points deals.
Let's talk about mistake fares a little bit
Okay.
on cash deals versus points deals. Do they even happen on points deals? Because sometimes you hear about mistake fares on international flights where it's like fly to Vietnam for $500 in business class. When are those things legitimate? Like, oh my God, this is a great deal. I should go ahead and book this. Versus when is it likely a tech glitch? It's going to get canceled on you. How does somebody know, oh, this deal is really good versus this deal is too good to be true?
It's honestly at the discretion of the airline these days. And mistake fears are fading more and more away because airlines are smarter. They have better tech. They're catching those things faster. So it is just at the discretion of the airline if they're going to cancel it or not. I think it comes down to like kind of your risk assessment on like, how are you going to feel if gets canceled? Is this your only booking? And have you then transferred points over that are now stuck there? So I think there's a bit of risk assessment involved when you're considering a mistake fare, especially with points. I mean, if we're talking about with cash, you have to look at the terms and conditions, what your refund is going to look like and things like that. But when it comes to points, I think there's a bit of risk assessment involved there. There are so many airlines use dynamic pricing now. And so there are sweet spots where you book things that feel like, oh my gosh, that felt too good to be true. Like I've booked several routes on Virgin Atlantic that I'm like, I can't believe I actually just booked that like upper class flight for such incredible deals. So there are these sweet spots that land and they're legit. But as far as mistake fares, I think one, they're few and far between now, and it really is just at discretion of the airline, and your risk assessment super important there.
Are sweet spots so much of a thing with cash deals as well? Because we use that phrase all the time in the world of points and miles. Like, oh, you can book from Chicago over to Spain with Iberia, or you can book over to Tahiti with Air Tahiti Nui, and you can book that through Qantas. You have all of these different like known sweet spots where people just know to look for those routes. Does that exist in the world of cash deals?
I would say no. I would say in the cash deal world, we're looking more for the price drops. And I don't necessarily think it has like a rhythm like points deals do, where it's like you said, we know these sweet spots are here. We know they exist. We know what to look for. But with cash deals, it's kind of having those alerts set up, watching for the price drops. And it's not necessarily to like a specific rhythm of, oh, we know this route at some point is going to have a very specific deal like we do on the point side of things.
You mentioned it's important to look into the T&Cs, the terms and conditions for any deal that you book. Which airlines would you say tend to be more generous with cancellation policies, change policies? If they have some kind of weird mistake fare, they'll probably honor it, versus which ones just have so much legal language where you're just like, you will need a small team of lawyers in order to even book a deal with this airline and to try to get out of your contract of carriage. Which of the airlines are better about those versus like the ones that just try to sneak in T&Cs?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I gratefully have not heard of any major horror stories on the point side of things. Maybe you have. I'm curious if you have, but I really haven't heard any like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you got trapped into that. I think the program that comes to mind as like the stickiest or the hardest to work with is Life Miles. I don't know that it's necessarily connected to like mistake fares or things like that. I've just heard that they've been a little harder to work with and they have such great partner space, but sometimes it becomes a bit of a headache when you have changes or different things like that happen. On the positive side, on the flip side of that, I'm a little bit obsessed with Virgin Atlantic. It's kind of my go-to brand. I think they're very flexible and they have some of the best customer support around. I've had to change a few things. Again, this was not mistake fare connected or anything like that, but I've had to make some changes and it was so simple and easy and straightforward. And I've also heard great things about the Flying Blue program, again, with changes and different things like that as well.
I have found that the US-based programs, so United, American Airlines, Delta, Alaska, Southwest, those tend to be very, very generous with
Mm.
change fees, cancellation fees, and just general flexibility of having to change up an award flight. Now, you probably won't get the best cents per point with a lot of those, but they do make up for it in flexibility. Whereas I've had a ticket with Qantas that I have had to change just multiple times over the years. And I think each time I change it, they take 5,000 points from my account. And every time I cancel it, it's like 6,000 points. So I've probably spent 30,000 points between me and my husband at this point, just
Oh,
redoing flights with Qantas, which kind of sucks. Also, Etihad is
mm,
one of those where I think it's just like 25% of the points you paid are non-refundable or something like
mhm.
that. So that one's also rough.
Yeah, yeah, that's so interesting. So maybe ones to stay away from if there's like a deal that feels like, oh my gosh, that was too good to be true. It's interesting you brought up the American-based carriers too, because I'm thinking a deal we launched out with from Daily Drop Pro recently was the new award space that opened up that you could book on JAL through JetBlue. And we were kind of looking at the award space. I don't know if you saw that out about in the world. I can't remember the exact points value that it was off the top of my head. I could pull it up probably, but we were kind of looking at that like, is this a mistake fare? It's very low to fly US over to Asia. And so far, everyone that's booked it, we had a few people book it in our community. They've been able to keep their itinerary. So I think you're spot on with the US based carrier.
What are some other ways that points deals differ than cash deals? Do you find that one is easier than the other if you have a lot of people who are trying to fly on the same flight? Where if you have a family of 4 or 5 or 6 people, is one of these routes better than the other?
Better, I don't know if I'd say better. I'd say cash can be easier. I never like to say it's impossible, but at the end of the day, award space is going to be limited, right? So finding 5 flights in business class can be very difficult. I won't say impossible. People have done it. I booked 7 people on the same flight in premium economy, and it was one of my favorite experiences ever. It's possible, but it does take flexibility and it does take a lot of research and probably a lot of patience on the point side of things. So I'd say cash deals may be a little bit easier. You're just kind of patiently watching those prices, seeing when a price lands where it's like, oh, yeah, okay, that works. Whereas points deals, there's going to be a little bit of heavier research involved in that.
How about if somebody tends to be more of an economy traveler versus a business class traveler? Would you say that cash deals show up more for economy, points deals are more valuable if you want to fly the luxurious airline products, vice versa? What would you say is the best way to go for somebody who prefers budget versus luxury travel?
Yeah, your points can definitely go far if you're okay with the economy class travel. So I think if that was the case, I would probably say lean into your points deals. And that would probably be my go-to if you're all about the economy.
If you're all about economy, then you should do points deals instead of cash deals.
I would just say lean into it a little bit more. Your points are going to go further than if you're looking for those premium experiences. But at the end of the day, like I said at the start of the conversation, like your travel budget is your travel budget. And I think we should kind of look at it in a holistic way. So I'd lean into points deals because I know I can stretch them further. It's my points are going, or my flights are going to be less points when they're economy class, right? Just like they're going to be less cash if they're economy class. So I would lean into it, but I would say, I mean, look, your smart research is important. So look at both. Look at the cash deals and look at the points deals and then make your assessment from there. I think everyone has the different travel circumstances, but also everyone uses miles and points for different reasons as well. So I'm definitely not someone who gets really caught up in like the cent per point valuation of everything. If your ultimate goal is to save as much cash as possible, then using points for an economy class flight is going to be a great deal for you. So I think there's so many variables in that conversation as well.
When people are pretty metrics driven, what do you say they tend to gravitate towards when someone's like, oh, I saved this much on a cash deal versus I saved this much on a points deal? What is the general methodology that your community likes to use when they're like, oh, this is how much you saved?
Yeah, I think when someone's super metrics driven, that those are the people I feel like are leaning into the points deals. They're the people that are doing the long-houred research processes to find, like, the best of the best deal. So I feel like those are the people who are leaning into those points deals a little bit more. They're quite a bit of time doing their research, searching through every partner, planning on taking multiple days to search through all of their partners that they have access to as well, and then using that standard cent per point valuation formula to see which flight does have the best value.
Sounds good. So you've mentioned Daily Drop Pro a couple times during this episode. If you can fire that up, we would love to get a little bit of a demo to see what kinds of features and different tips and tricks people can find in Daily Drop Pro. Is there
Yeah.
also a Daily Drop free, or is
There
there just a pro version?
Yes, there is both. So we have our newsletter that we send 5 times per week at Daily Drop. That's completely free. So miles and points, tips, travel deals every single day right into your inbox. And then we have Daily Drop Pro, which is our software that we'll be demoing here. There is a free version, and then there's also our pro version, which is a paid version. Our pro version, you're going to get unlimited travel deals, unlimited searches. You also get our redemption support calls in our community space and a wallet feature as well. So the pro version has more features to kind of get the most out of your travel deals.
Awesome. So once somebody has access to Pro, what are some of the main use cases for this, and how do people normally use this tool?
So the screen we're on right now is our deals dashboard. So this is kind of that spot I was talking about where we say it's all about letting the deal decide the destination. And that spot I was talking about where, okay, if we're running a bunch of cache searches, we're searching through how many dates, we're searching through how many different airlines, how many different alerts are we setting up. And then on the point side of things, we're running searches. I was just talking about our more metrics driven people. They're running searches. They're spending hours, maybe days, finding the best redemption for them. So our deals dash is really designed to cut back the time on all of that. So we have points deals and cash deals. So we have economy, international, business class, international, and then domestic flight deals all loaded up in the dash here. And these are all based on preferences you set up. So you set up your home airport. You can actually set up to 10 airports as a pro member. So I always recommend setting up all 10 so you can maximize on things like positioning flights. And then from there, when you click into a deal, like I'm clicked into speaking of economy class, an economy class deal from Orlando, which is my home airport, which is not the best of the best home airports to have. I often have to position myself. So I get excited when I see a direct flight from my home airport. And it gives you all of the details you would need to know to book any of the deals, whether it's points or cash. We have a full calendar, so exactly when the award space is available. There's no guessing on like, okay, when is this deal actually here? All of the route information, how you transfer your points, and everything like that is all right in the deals page.
What are the filters that somebody can select? Like, I'm based in Las Vegas, but
Mhm.
let's say I don't need a flight from Las Vegas. I need a flight to get from Europe to Asia to connect a different itinerary. How does somebody set up all of these different filters?
Yeah, so I've got our settings page pulled up here. We've got some really granular filters. I actually love going through the filters section because I feel like this is where you can really get the most out of your deals because you can get as granular or as broad as you'd like. So, like I was saying, you can do 10 airports. So, you can turn these on for both cash and points. You can turn them on or off for domestic or international. So, you can really play with where your deal is actually coming from. So if you're that savvy traveler that knows, okay, this is where I'm willing to fly to get a great points deal, or if you're positioning, this is where I'm willing to position to for a great cash deal, you can kind of turn those on and off in there. You can also play with destinations, so where you actually want to go, and then the budget you're willing to pay for those. So you can say, I'll only pay this much to go to this region for both economy and business. We have deal preferences. So if you're like I was talking about earlier, like me, and you're like, I'm good on the budget airlines. If I find a great deal, great, but I don't really need to be alerted of a great deal. You can kind of flip that off and on. And then various different preferences like flights with stops. If you don't want business class that doesn't have the lie flat, because that's kind of the dreamy aspiration for a lot of people, you can turn those off. And then availability, which is just a great one if you're like very limited, if you can only travel in the summer or something like that. So those are the various settings you can set up.
Can you look for travel availability based off of specific dates? So if you're like, my kid has spring break this week, we can go wherever, but just send me anything that works with a specific week. Does it do that?
So you can't set it to be alerted of a specific week. We do have our deal search feature. So this you can search from wherever to wherever. You can search your cash deals like this, and it'll show you the cheapest available route for various different months. So you could do it that way. And then on the point side of things, we have our flights point search and then also our hotel point search where you can search unlimited award space. The flight search goes over 140 different airline programs, and the hotel search goes over the 7 major hotel brands. So if you have a very specific date in mind, I would say to lean on this feature for that.
Does this mostly just do point to point, like from Orlando over to Paris? It's not going to recommend to you, hey, you could save a little bit more if you're willing to fly out of Atlanta or out of Miami. And if you can go a couple days earlier, a couple days later, it's not going to tell you change up your plans if you can to save more money, will it?
No, that's right. So yeah, it's going to be point to point search. I would say the deals dash is more designed to help you out with like, hey, alert, there's this amazing deal that maybe you didn't even think about. And we have humans actually go through all of these deals and make sure they're actually great deals before they're served up to you. So our deals dash is kind of the space where it's like, hey, you maybe didn't think about this, but this is available. Whereas the search, yeah, it's going to be point to point, or in the hotel section, it's going to be by city.
Speaking of having humans who are actually verifying all of this, how much of finding deals is about human just manual labor, like you're going to have to spend some time turning this out, versus how much of the art of this game is knowing what the right tools are to use? Because I feel like in the beginning, it really swayed towards Camp One, where it was just like, you need a team of VAs to just be clicking through Google Flights all the time. And now I think it's swung a little bit more, maybe too far, to the other side where everybody's like, what's the number one tool to find me anything I ever want? And it'll be like ChatGPT, where I'm just like, find me the best deals. And it's just going to know. That doesn't exist, by the way, for anybody who's wondering. So, how much of this deal finding art for you guys is technology versus humans?
Yeah. So I love that you said like we've swung way too far the other direction because I think there's like a happy balance in between. And I think when we're talking about point steals specifically, I think it's always important to know the manual skills to find award space. So I think that's kind of a foundational piece so that you do know how to run award searches when you're using a tool like Daily Drop Pro, where it's going to cut back some time because it's searching across those 140 different programs. You're able to quickly go, okay, well, I know I have baselines based on like my home airport, for example, and I know what I'm willing to book here. And then on the cash deal side of things, I mean, again, I think it's important to know how to run your manual searches. I would say I lean more on the tech side of things for the cash deals, because I think that's because the beginning cash deals are just a little more straightforward. There's not this like exact formula. And so I'm going to kind of trust like, okay, the tech's kind of got me on the cash deal side of things. Whereas the point side of things, I think that human touch is important to know and to make sure you're flexing the muscle on.
Tools glitch all the time. And so many times people are like, I didn't double check on the actual airline website. I just saw that this tool told me there was a deal. So I moved my point and now they're stuck because it was phantom space. So, fundamentals of knowing how to do things by hand, I've said it many times, and I'll say it again on this podcast. That really is what separates good from great. People who are trying to level up in the world of points and miles. We talk about so many great tools on this channel and through all the tutorials, but I think some people do get a little bit dependent, overly dependent, where they're like, hey, I need flights from Oklahoma City over to Phuket, Thailand, and I want to fly Q Suites, and I only have this type of points. Why can't I find anything? And just understanding one level deeper of the nuances of what you're trying to ask this tool to do. It is not set up to do those things. Or the number of people who just type in, find me an ANA around the world redemption. Like, there's no, to my knowledge, no automated tool that can do that, where you're just like, ANA around the world. By the time this airs, that might not even be a thing anymore. But
Yeah, I think it's so important. And Daily Drop Pro does an in real time search, and award space can change like in a minute. So even though it's in real time, if you have that tab open and you leave the room, you get a coffee, you come back, someone could have taken that award space in that exact moment. So it's so important to run those manual searches. Something else, another feature we have in Pro, if you're actually using the search function and you're running a search point to point, is there's a step-by-step booking process walkthrough that's going to show you, okay, now go search it manually. Here's exactly how you do it. Okay, you're transferring points. Here's exactly how you do it. Okay, make sure the space is still there. So it's going to walk you through those steps of the manual search process, making sure you're doing that part and not just like, okay, I'm transferring it, now it's done.
for sure.
Yeah.
So as we kind of wrap up here and people want to try out Daily Drop Pro and learn a little bit more about the community and how to find deals on their own or just be alerted to deals that you find for them, what's the best way to get access to all this?
Yes. So we, like I said, we send our newsletter 5 times per week. That's completely free. And you can subscribe to that at dailydrop.com. And then for all the listeners of the show, if you want to try out Daily Drop Pro, we have a special $30 off coupon that we'll make sure is linked up in the show notes for everyone if they want to try that out and do the unlimited searches and come hang out with me on our monthly onboarding calls and our monthly redemption support calls. Then we'll have that coupon for everyone to come join the Pro fun.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again, Megan, so much for joining us on the show today and doing this demo of this tool. I didn't even know that that tool existed. I was always like, oh, Daily Drop, it's like the newsletter that sends out different deals. So always good to see all of the amazing tools that are being built for the Points and Miles community and the travel community at large. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Julia. It's been a blast.